Welcome to Coffee Table Comics. I had a question from Steve Donis. I just wanted to ask if you can please let me know what is the best way to bring in my inks for color. I see that you get them crisp into the system and then color it. I have always inked digitally but would like to gain the organic feel with my inks. So thank you, Steve. I'm going to just show you real quick my process. And so I scan all my art in color at 400 dpi. And I can sometimes even go up to 600 dpi if I want to zoom into that image and make sure I get clarity. So that's the main thing right there for when you're starting it out. And if you scan it in at black and white, then you'll lose a lot of the control over these colors that we can adjust. We have some scans here. I'm going to bring these into Photoshop. And as you can see, they're upside down and all messed up. So we'll just work on organizing that. I rotated the canvas. Now you can see my my printout that I actually inked on had this weird gray value on it on the actual paper, and so that was scanned in. You also see that there's some, if you zoom in real close, you see that there's some weird like color here, and this is because I printed it out with a magenta color. And then I inked over top of that, and so it's still picking up that really light. If I zoom in real close, you can see, you know, there's some of that tone stuff in there. And then also the inks are not necessarily black. So that's kind of a typical scan. So what I do first is I command L for levels, open up levels. I kind of zoom in a little closer than normal. And then I pull this here, I guess the dark side down so that this little hump, there's usually a hump here and a hump and bumps here, which represent kind of like how dark the darks are and how light the lights are. And so if you pull this down, you can see in my image the darks, it cuts out a lot of the gray value in those darks, and it actually makes the ceiling of my palette, I don't know if I'm saying the right words, guys, sorry. It makes it so that these darks, it kind of cuts it off so that they go completely black, and then beyond that is all solid black, right? Everything above this point is solid black. And so we can have a lot more gray value in there, or we can push it to where it forces everything above this value to be solid black. We can do the same with the whites, and you can see there's this big section here where it's kind of gone off the charts, and so at least, if anything, pull it down to that point. But I like to take it even further and push out a lot of these colors over here. I'll drag this over. A lot of these colors right here, we can push those out and make the white ceiling kind of towards the bottom of that arc. So we're at the bottom of that arc now. So now our blacks get blown out and they're completely black above this point, and our whites get blown out and they're completely white beyond that point. And so most of that garbage around the edges has been taken out, and we still have this big range of gray value between white and black. It's just we're controlling the edges now. And I don't do anything else with anything else. There's still some stuff like this which you can actually just, if you're like me, sometimes it's just better to just delete it, because that was just a flaw in my printing. Now that we've adjusted our levels, let's go to Command U and pull up hue saturation. And hue saturation is great for a lot of things, but in this process I do a couple things. I change it from master, so we're not affecting everything, we're just affecting reds, and I'm doing this primarily because my printout had a slight reddish tone to it. So I just take out all those reds, I push them all to white, and as you can see, the reds are turning white now. And it shouldn't affect our inks. I'm going to do the same with yellows, because sometimes my printer prints out a little yellow layer. And this is just the workaround with having, you have to figure out what your printers and your scanners do, and then you can, apply the changes accordingly. And then I also get a lot of magentas because that's what I selected as my print color. And so I'm pulling out all those colors and pushing them to white. So now any of the really little garbagey stuff around the edges is pushed to white. And then I go back to master, and you can see this is still white here, but now I just take everything else and I push the saturation to none, which means everything will be gray tone from this point on. So now we have a completely black and white image. All of those colors that we printed out, kind of like our Blue Line Pro colors, but in my case it was more magentas. I keyed those out, kinda. I guess it was a way of keying it out. And then the only other thing I need to do is just go find these weird little edges where there's crusties, and cut those out. And of course I need to cut my name out so that it's not on every page, and I keep pushing the wrong button. If you make a selection like this, and you have your background color black and your foreground color white, like Command Delete fills it in with the background color, Option Delete fills it in with the foreground color. So that's just what I'm doing here. I'm doing the Command Delete or Option Delete, and sometimes I get it backwards. So it looks like our page is decent now. You know, there's still a little bit of whites in some areas. I still have, So we have this big image. This one's 400 dpi again. I'm gonna grab the actual page now. This is where my sketches are. And it looks nice, but you know, once you zoom in, you realize it's just a digital sketch, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I didn't finish it as a sketch. So now I'm gonna take these images in, and I'm just gonna drag them in place. And see, it's bigger because I scanned it at 400 dpi. My page is 300 dpi though. So the image is a little bigger, and it's because I wanted to keep that clarity of those edges. So we just have our inks layer now on top, and then we have our sketch under. And usually what I do is I just turn down the opacity a little bit. I hit F to go to full screen, Command T to transform, and then I just kind of position this image over top of my sketch as good as I can, at least what is pleasing to the eye. And that works for me. And then can increase that back to 100% opacity, so it's opaque. Now see, I have this image here that's inked, and the rest is the sketch. So we're going to go out of full screen again. This page is a little weird because I usually don't break up the panels like I did here, but as you can see, I tried to just put them all on one piece of paper without having to splice them together. And so it's a little odd the way I'm doing it, but it's good for an example. So I'm going to just do the same thing I did. That's good enough there. Like this one here has all this other information in it. I will remove this panel. Bring that over. Turn down the opacity. I'm just eyeballing all this stuff. So, you know, they're my thumbnails, and I'm just trying to line it up to the thumbnails as good as I can. And it looks like this, I really did this page differently, where I just broke it up into a bunch of different sections, which is, like I say, it's unusual. But okay, so now if I turn off the sketches, turn all these back up to 100%, and I want to turn these to darken so that the lines kind of blend through each other. And it looks like I'm going to have to clean up a little bit of this stuff where these drawings meet, but for the most part I'm happy with it. I'm going to merge those all together. So now we have this new inks layer over top of our sketches. So that's our sketches, that's our inks. And now there's little things you got to clean up. And the more zoomed in you get, the more you start seeing like little things that you want to get rid of. But for the most part, it's just dust on the scanner. So one thing you can do in getting to a little closer to color is I'm going to just merge this all into a white. So we have a solid black and white drawing. You can take this line art, you can go to channels. Over the RGB channel, you hit Command, and your little hand turns into this little square. Hit that, and everything white gets selected. I can invert that by Shift Command I. Go back to my layers. I'll make a new layer. I'll call this Inks Alpha. And I will hit Fill with Option Delete, which fills in my front foreground color. Deselect. And now I have my lines on an alpha channel, basically. And I can just delete this other layer. Now when I turn on the white background, it looks exactly the same as my other layer when it had the white, but now there's no white. So the beauty of this is I can lock these pixels, and I can go in with an airbrush. Let's make a big airbrush. And I can actually just paint on those lines. So it's a real easy way to make those lines the color you want. And they're independent from the background. So you don't like that, you can just paint it back to black. And it has all that gray value preserved in there. It doesn't have any white though, it's just gray. It's just transparent. So the more white it gets, the more transparent it is. And it's only using black. So that's a perfect way to set up your lines. Anyway, that's it. That's how I set up my lines, my colors, my scans, everything is ready for coloring now. I can send this to my flatter and start rocking it. All right, guys, hopefully that helps. Thanks for the question, Steve.